It's a pleasure to be here, and it's an honor to share a platform with yourself and Betty, whose work I have been relying on for years on international education. But I'm here just to share some thoughts from Europe on the subject of COVID and post-COVID, and perhaps as a doctor begin with the putting COVID in some perspective. Of course, it has created chaos globally. All pandemics of this nature have done so through history. But in 10 years' time, it's very likely we'll just look at COVID as the influenza of the day. 1919, it killed 100 million people. And today we see something that will recede over the next year, or perhaps 3 or 4 in some parts of the world. And we will see it, like most pandemics, as an accelerator of changes that were inevitable for other reasons. So in Europe, we've had the same experience as India and everywhere else, transforming overnight to virtual realities with emergency remote teaching, research. And what it did, I think, is that it challenged mindsets and previous assumptions about how universities have to function. I should also add that there has been a positive aspect to it. We must remember that science, university-based, and science-based public policy has reduced the mortality of this pandemic to about 2 or 3% of the experience back in 1919. And that is something that's a major positive for our sector. But anyway, driven by COVID, we've undertaken a consultation here in Europe at the EUA during the past year on how we must adapt and how we must evolve in the coming years, not just in response to COVID, but in response to all other drivers. And I'll relate what we have found and then some comments on likely impact on the international student experience. The first finding, of course, was a broad consensus that yes, we have a pandemic, but environmental sustainability and digitalization and artificial intelligence and demographic changes and polarization, they're the real drivers of what's going to happen in universities and in international education in the coming years. And we found a surprisingly broad consensus that we have to shift the paradigm, change how we function. And thus we have produced a summary document called Universities Without Walls, no more intramural and extramural discussions. So what we see now, accelerated by COVID, is, as you've said earlier, we see hybrid institutions where learning will be conducted on the campus, but also virtually. And in addition, in the workplace, in cultural spaces, in civic societies, quite a change. In Europe, we also see the universities becoming very deeply networked. We're collaborating much more in teaching and research, joint degrees, and we have an EU Commission-funded initiative piloting this model. Some 240 universities here are already grouped into over 40 networks, even testing the concept of a Europe-wide degree, a European degree. Open walls, of course, refers to the growing interdisciplinarity, the critical need for it, and open to new models of learning, more flexible, more learner-centered, and seeing students as co-creators of knowledge, many of them working in peer groups. We see open walls where the staff and students are more mobile between institutions and countries, virtually as much as in reality, because that's how we have to address intercultural agility. And the Erasmus program, as an exemplar here, now has a very specifically defined green objective. The staff mobility, of course, between the university and the workplace and other civic spaces, so that they remain connected to the real world, and outside experts teaching more on campus. Students experiencing workplace learning, experiential learning, because we must robot-proof, as Joseph Aoun has nicely put it in his book. More diverse cohort of learners, far more lifelong learners, older students, more disadvantaged students, mirroring diversity in society. So elitism has had its day. And again, critically, open evidence-based debate, pluralist society, research that is open, open access, open journals, open access data. So the implications of this for international education are that there would be far more collaborative online international learning, virtual mobility, much less flying, physical presence not necessary as before. The green agenda will dominate. The SDGs are our cardinal goal. Much more home country-based transnational education signaled earlier. And when you do engage in future with a European university, you're very likely to be registered with one, but experiencing a whole range of institutions in the network. The learning will be more experiential, and your student peers will be far more diverse and a lot of peer learning. If you want to do research, certainly with Europe in the coming years, there has to be a commitment to open access and open publishing, because that's how we rebuild trust in science, in evidence, and in expertise. So to put it in a nutshell, COVID is a passing phenomenon, as influenza was. Annual booster shots for the elderly and those at risk in the years ahead. But it has been a valuable accelerator to universities engaging in rethinking our future in order to address even more pressing and long-term global challenges. So they're my opening remarks, and I look forward to the conversation in a moment, Hans.